Hi, I'm Monica with the Stop Mandated Shunning Project, where we expose religions and other groups that use organized ostracism to control their members. Today, I want to talk about vocabulary surrounding mandated shunning. Every group has their own terminology for the same practice, so I have some friends with me and they will describe what terms are used in their groups.
So I grew up in the Geelong Revival Centre, and we had two different terms. One was backslider, which is somebody who has essentially turned their back on God and no longer believes and is cast off from everything that they know. The other one is the term put out of fellowship. So when you do something wrong and you are disciplined within the church, they call it being put out of fellowship, where that person is essentially cast off for a brief period of time, however long that is determined by the church. And after they've done their time, they're able to come back into the fellowship and be part of the church again. The backslider term is something that we were really taught to fear, due to it being a big grieving process. We had to almost believe that that person in our mind had died, because we weren't allowed any contact with them, no matter who it was.
When people were under church discipline, they were put in the bunk, and we practiced Maitum. Even as children, that Maitum impacted us because we would see people who were set at a different table. We would see people who were talked about in hushed tones and labeled as fence jumpers. People who just thought the grass was greener on the other side of the fence. Agangni means people who have fallen away, and Vajrang means you ran away, so they were runaways. Or some people they just really were unsubmissive. They were not submitting themselves to the will of God. Some of them would be talked about like they were nafi, meaning they were mentally ill. Some were considered wild. They were living a loose life. The last time I was in Ohio, I was at a community meeting against harm, and an Amish guy told me, he picked up this book, and he said, "Oh, it's just going too far." And that's where they will say, "Oh, we just leave it to God. There's no point in talking to them anymore. They're too far gone." People sometimes tell their children that it would have been better that they have never been born than for them to go out into the world and live such a loose, worldly life because they were taught better or being raised Amish. I was told that. I know many people who were told that. Thank you.
I was raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, so the term I was familiar with was disfellowshipped. A person who was disfellowshipped was compared to being dead, and we were all supposed to shun them. I also saw in the literature expressions like given over to Satan, mentally diseased, and people who were disfellowshipped were compared to poison or a contagious disease. We would love it if you would help us fill out this mandated shunning vocabulary chart. If you have ever been a part of a group that practices organized ostracism, please let us know in the comments the name of the group and what terminology was used.